Greetings, everyone.
Good morning.
We have returned.
Raised from the dead.
Yeah, so we didn't.
Or something.
We didn't have episodes this week because I was away avoiding writing for a week, as is often the case. But this is January 22nd, 2021.
Yeah. Did anything happen this week?
Biden happened.
Biden
Harris.
Have we been biding our time waiting for this episode?
Yes, indeed we have.
So I'm Daniel Walpert. I direct Micah, the Minnesota Institute of Contemplation and Healing.
And I'm Mark Vanstimnik. I direct the Center for Prophetic Imagination.
And actually, one thing, I can't wait to stop having those giant American flags on our front logo.
You know, I've got lazy about it.
Yeah, we need to stop.
Yeah, I'm not I was throwing up in my mouth a little bit, making these patriotic images. But to me, it's like, I mean, the last two, this one, and then the last one had a picture of, Trump and Biden or different things.
Right.
And so, yeah, I promise, if it'll be at least a week before I use an American flag, and if I use it, it'll be upside down or on fire. Is that a?
There we go.
Yeah,
I kind of like on fire. So, so obviously a lot happened this week, all centered kind of around the inauguration, and so we thought that today would be kind of a good day to just reflect back a little bit on the week. This, as we said, especially because we haven't had any episodes, and. I think for me, the main thing I've been thinking about over and over and over again this week and aware of, really in myself and certainly in a lot of what I'm hearing from people is just the recognition of how low the bar is for feeling good about our national government, right? Like that, and I've been joking that the bar is so low that it will be excavated by archaeologists at a later date. And so, as I was watching the inauguration, parts of it kind of jumping on and off in between appointments on Wednesday, I mean, what I just found in myself was like, oh my gosh, these people are speaking in complete sentences. Oh my gosh, these people aren't, totally insulting folks. These people aren't babbling nonsense. These people aren't pretending that the pandemic doesn't exist. And that makes me feel really good, and I did. I mean, I felt really good about all those things, except then I pull back and I think to myself, like, wait a minute, shouldn't all those things sort of be taken for granted? Like, it's I feel like we're at that point of getting a gold star for participation. And I feel like we should be expecting a whole lot more from our national government.
I mean, it's a tricky spot. Like, I don't want to like come down too hard on people who feel relief, but I also don't want us to get complacent. And so to me, it's like, we got to be able to do both. We got to be able to do both. It's like, to me, it reminds me of like one time I went camping, this long thing, and there's going to be a 4-day fast involved. And so like the week before I had to eat like really low, simple foods that were not rich. And then I fasted for 4 days, and I came back out of this desert canyon and they'd made a bunch of lentil stew, which if you know me, I don't like lentil stew. It's like, I mean, I lived in an intentional community for a long time. And there's too many fucking lentils. So I'm like, don't like it. But for some reason, after fasting for 4 days, it's like, oh my God, this is ambrosia. Oh my God, it's so good. That's what we're having with Biden. Like, he's not good. He's still lentil stew. And we have to remember and hope for more. But at the same time, it's okay to enjoy it. Eat your bowl of lentil soup and move on.
Right.
We got to move on to greater things. If you're vegan, let's get some tofu action. If you're not, let's get some beef. Whatever metaphor works for you. We need to move on from this thin stew to something richer. And I apologize for those of you who love lentils, or more likely have convinced yourself that you love lentils.
Yeah, no, that's a great analogy. And yeah, I was thinking back to like backpacking trips where, on the last day,
better, yeah.
the last day you're hiking out and you're down to like a couple of, dehydrated bars of some weird crap and, a little bit of pressed dust. And, you're just thinking about like,
bag in your mouth.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about, oh my gosh, like all the things I'm going to eat and everything is going to taste so good. Right. Even things that in and of themselves aren't that exciting. But yeah. And
hamburgers taste good after you've been camping.
Oh, yeah.
They're really good.
Didn't we talk once about In-N-Out Burger? I mean, like at that point, an In-N-Out Burger is like this gourmet meal, right? Yeah, and so part of so it's being able to hold complexity, which as we've talked about a number of times, is a real challenge for people and for our population, and so yeah, I mean, to have Trump gone is awesome. To have an administration that is actually going to let scientists and public health officials do their job is awesome, right? I mean, Anthony Fauci looks like he's on some kind of happy pills. Every time you see him on TV now, the guy is like smiling from ear to ear. And all those things are fabulous, right? All those things are fabulous. And so we don't want to diminish that. And at the same time, I also see people acting like, the GOP and the dump fans and the 74 million people that voted for him, like they've sort of vanished somehow, right? Which is absolutely ridiculous. And, within one day of the inauguration, I was actually pretty surprised. Like on inauguration day, I kept going over to the Fox News website, and it was pretty sort of decent. Wasn't horrendous. But within one day, they're back to, Biden's terrible. All these executive orders are terrible. Everything that he's doing is terrible. It's sort of back to business as usual. And so I think that that's important to recognize that before we started, Mark, you were talking about Obama, that we had this like major glee fest when Obama got elected, and then everybody hit the snooze button and then woke up a couple years later and were like, oh my gosh, like nothing much has really happened.
Now, I remember being really angry during the first 100 days of Obama, and then later because it wasn't even hidden. He didn't close Guantanamo. Right. The first thing he did almost was add 30,000 troops to Afghanistan. And so when a bunch of anarchists started and protested, a lot of the older peace and justices were still caught in the afterglow of Obama and would not join the protest.
Yeah.
So I remember that. I remember when you started trying to tell people there's been more deportations and more drone strikes under Obama, and people are like, you're full of shit. He's Obama. He's a man of peace. So this naivete that comes, it's like, look, it's not that I have to hate Obama. Like I can recognize oh my God, he's better than Bush, and think maybe if he weren't a president, he'd be a great guy. But right now he's death dealing, and we need to take that seriously and only take a small amount of comfort that it could be worse. Like the idea that it could be worse is not really a good moral justification for what exists in the world.
Don't tell that to people in North Dakota, because that is their central phrase.
It could be worse.
It could be worse.
I mean, I grew up an hour from Fargo.
Yeah.
So
So
my
you
whole
probably
culture
heard that a lot.
yeah, there's this sentiment, and it's very baked in, is that
Yeah.
if you are not grateful for what little you have, you don't even deserve that much.
Yeah.
Nothing is worse than a complainer.
Right.
And so that's
So we're
how
pretty bad.
people who are oppressed, like artists, like crying babies to folks like that.
Well, we got some comments coming on.
Here's a suggestion from Gus. Feel like we should be wishing you a happy new year. Transmission is like the Orthodox with a slightly different calendar.
I like that. I
This
like
is
that,
happy
Gus.
new year, everyone.
Yes, happy new year, everybody.
January 22nd is the first year of the transmission calendar, first day of the transmission calendar.
Yeah.
But there's only 283 days in a year, so you have to do the math yourself. Mark writes, want to be the first to say that I, for one, welcome our new diverse intersectional imperialists in the executive branch. That's another thing. Like, I don't want to diminish the it's not even just mere symbolism. Kamala Harris being in office. It's not just I don't want to be so cynical that I don't recognize that there's weight to that. However, I don't want to overweigh it either. Like she doesn't have some sort of deep arcane magics that she can like, throw liberation upon the land and we'll all be free. Like she's still stuck in the same system that the rest of us are in. So even if she had the best analysis and motives, which I don't believe she does at all, there's only so much she can do. So like taking comfort where we can, yes, let's not be naive.
Yeah, I mean the Attorney General of Kentucky is a black man, right? How's that working out for Breonna Taylor and their family? And and my favorite example of this is Margaret Thatcher was a woman, right? And so this is one of the first women to lead a Western country. And again, as you're saying, I mean, it's great that finally you can have women in power. That is a good thing. Does it guarantee that the big systems are going to change? Not at all.
And sometimes they can get worse. Like Margaret Thatcher is a great example of
Margaret Thatcher is worse.
Her perspective, her social location, her identity doesn't guarantee that she understood anything any better. Which is, so among the left, people love to crap on identity politics as being dumb, and which is not fair at all, because like really good, robust identity politics is an important part of the analysis. But at the same time, we all want to have magic, like silver bullets that kind of fix whatever the problem is. So for some, it's like if everyone could do contemplation, we'll all of a sudden wake up to a world of justice. Other people think like, as long as we have class analysis, there's always this one thing that if everyone understood, and that's just not how the world works. Anyways, end sermon. Kathleen writes, I love that Biden brought in a poet. The concert was fantastic. We have missed the arts. Yeah. I saw some memes about that. I was away, so I didn't see the inauguration. All I knew for sure was that Garth Brooks sang Amazing Grace, which I couldn't help the bone being thrown to kind of the country and Western crowd by picking the most progressive country singer besides the Dixie Chicks to come in and sing Amazing Grace. It's kind of
no, I mean, the arts aspect of the whole day was phenomenal, right? Yeah, I mean, this young woman who's the poet is incredible. The music, I mean, all day and into the evening was amazing. That was all really, really fun. It was really good.
Becca writes, "You got this all wrong, man. Didn't you hear about Operation Shadow Press?"
Right.
Tell me about this, Dan.
Yeah. So this is another theme of the week, right? Is kind of watching the far right, if you want to call them that, watching the conspiracy theory world blow up. Which has been really interesting, and it's blown up in a number of different ways, right? So one of the ways it's blown up is to abandon Trump, right? So a lot of these people have been like, "Oh my God, Trump was a fraud, a con man, and somehow like secretly a fraud and a con man." which I don't quite get, because he's just obviously a fraud and a con man. I don't know why you need to be secret about it. So there's that. Then some of these leaders and grifters who've been making tons of money off of this stuff were just like, ha ha, oh well, and have just walked away. Like two of the most prominent Q guys just said, oh well, we had fun with this, but I guess it's not true. Signing off. And these guys have just taken tons of people's money, and now they're off to whatever next crazy thing they're going to do.
It's the American dream.
But then you've got, right, Rebecca, what you're talking about, which is the doubling down, right? The even more crazy conspiracy theories, which honestly have been just great sources of comedy. Right. So there's this one that Biden and the cabinet are actually all under arrest, and that they are simply doing Trump's bidding. Trump is still the president. And everything that happens with this administration is now Trump's doing.
Including turning back his executive.
Right. Even though the current administration is now doing the opposite of what Trump was doing. So
and you don't understand the layers upon layers of chess mastery going on.
I certainly do not. That is absolutely correct.
Gus writes, my favorite analogy that I've heard about Biden isn't that he's made any movement forward. He's just put the car in reverse.
Right. Good. Yeah.
Adam writes, yeah, the thing is not now to change your mind completely about how you feel about lentil stew. Well, the sad thing is it feels like a lot of people are doing just that. There's something that psychologically happens with people, and I notice this every time. Mm-hmm. People are fierce critics, but then the person they're critical of gets the nomination, so they're like, well, maybe not so bad. And by the end, the inauguration, like, Biden forever, like it's this sort of thing, like because people can't support something unless they are all in. It's like being a fan of a sports team. It's just really weird. I don't get it.
Yeah, but I mean, I do think that part of it that we need to acknowledge is that one, the trauma of the Trump years, and I think that's very, very real, and the relief that is gone, at least for the moment. And that was my point about all these 74 million people. They're not gone. And many of those sentiments are not gone by any means. But anyway, he's gone. So there's a tremendous relief for that. And then I think there's also this very natural desire. The Dalai Lama used to say this all the time, probably still does. He said, most people just want to live their lives with some basic kindness and security. That's just what most people want. Like, they just want to go through their day, have something to eat, have a place to stay, be able to take care of their kids, be able to do something meaningful, and just be treated with some kindness. And so, I think that's where a lot of this magnified hope and reaction comes from, is people are just like, okay, like maybe like life will be more mellow now. And, I have to really hope for that and get behind that. And I mean, I understand that impulse. I do.
Yeah. Tyler writes, I can't wait to wear my Biden hat, fly the Biden flag around, attend Biden boat parties, and litter my yard with Biden signs like a cultist weirdo.
Okay, so send us pictures, Tyler, when you do that. And when you go to the Biden boat party, don't get sunk. Sink somebody else.
I wonder how long these Trump flags will be around, because they're still out.
Okay. I've seen fewer and fewer of them all the time, but I'm sure there's still some.
They'll probably linger the way that Wellstone. In Minnesota, there's a phenomenon of people having Wellstone bumper stickers still.
Yeah.
Because he was such all things considered, he was a very good politician within this landscape. And he died prematurely in a plane crash. So there's this sort of like mystique and aura around that. So people still have these hopeful Wellstone signs. So maybe that's going to be, Trump will be like that. I don't know.
Could be.
Adam writes, thinking of Obama and how you can't say a bad word about him or Michelle Obama. It's like that with Kamala Harris and Elizabeth Warren. A friend of mine recently posted in Living Color's Cult of Personality, and it was pretty well timed. Yeah, there's this way, like, we gotta, I mean, this is hard too. Like, I get, like, some people criticize because it's just like, oh, I'm a misogynist and I'm going to criticize women, or I'm a white supremacist and I'm going to criticize people of color. And so I understand the sensitivity around, like, where's this criticism coming from? But it can be too much if, like, we can't do real analysis and recognize, like, and again, this is how in American politics, we tend to collapse everything down into individual action and intent. And it's like
personality.
And a lot of leftist critique is about systems. And so it's easy to assume, like, this critique of systems and people in power is somehow a critique of their identity. And it gets really messy real fast. Ceres writes, our quality of dialogue, even among leftists, are so bad that, one, any critique and argument ranging from concerns about returning to neoliberalism to grievances to even concerns about one of Hamilton's musical song lyrics being a part of a poem uncited would be considered enabling cancel culture firing squad. And two, that any misinformation, horrible and inappropriate comments, ideas, opinions, character assassinations, and self-righteousness hot takes are considered worthy of providing free speech. And it trails off their series, but I think I know where you're going with that. Like, it's this kind of this sort of weird, it's either, we think it's either cancel culture or it has to be full free speech. Like, we can't really have complexity and weigh certain things. Like, it's okay to say this idea is better than that idea. And not say, like, not fall into this idea that we have to have the marketplace of ideas where free speech is pure, or that and also be able to handle hard criticism without saying, oh, you're just canceling me. Like, this is really part of, I don't say this is about polarization so much as, like, a very simplistic way of thinking about analysis that we have in our society right now. It's very superficial. Ellen writes, it's too bad for musicians they left out Chris Gaines. For those that are not in the know, like, Garth Brooks tried to create an alter ego for a film called Chris Gaines. And so it's a pop star version of Garth Brooks, but it all fell apart. And so he released the album before the film, and the film never got this weird, random ass Garth Brooks video under the name of Chris Gaines. And it's his biggest failure in his rather successful life. So he doesn't really have that much room to complain. So so the fact that Garth Brooks got to sing, but Chris Gaines didn't, is really sad for Chris Gaines.
Maybe Chris Gaines really was singing. It was just a Garth Brooks automaton singing.
Or maybe Chris Gaines was pretending to be Garth Brooks. Maybe Garth Brooks has been Chris Gaines all along.
Yeah. Maybe Garth Brooks has been dead for years.
Maybe Chris Gaines is the shadow president. Pete writes, I would have preferred more regular people being lifted up as opposed to celebrities.
Yeah. Although, I mean, they tried to do that some in the evening, the sort of tour around America. And, but yeah, and not only sort of regular people, and this is where the systems analysis comes in. I mean, if you look at that entire inauguration day and everything that went into it and was required to create it, right? I mean, this was a massive propaganda event made possible by and supported by a massive military, right? There were very few people on Inauguration Day talking about the fact that this was not a peaceful transfer of power. You can't say, I mean, it's pure Orwellian speech to say that a peaceful transfer of power happens but is necessitated by 25,000 troops. That means there's not a peaceful transfer of power. But nobody was saying that, right? No, I mean, a few people, I'm sure, here and there, but definitely not in the main. And all the politicians that were up there were continually trying to harp on, oh, this is a peaceful transfer of power. But yeah, this was a massive systemic propaganda event. And it was very, very well done. It was very, very well done. Very successful.
Adam writes, I liken having Harris in office to the Wonder Woman films. It's historical and it's so good that they've finally been made. The problem is that they're really not very good, and the actor playing Wonder Woman is problematic at best. A good analogy. Mark writes, am I the only one that was actually disgusted at the singing of Amazing Grace at the inauguration from a standpoint of separation of church and state?
Yeah, that would actually, that would actually be a great episode to do, because it's not just Amazing Grace. I mean, this entire inauguration was, supported by and melded with Christianity from start to finish. Not even just on Wednesday, but even starting, Tuesday night with this memorial. And so that would be a very interesting thing to talk about.
Adam writes, representation is important. The problem is how identity politics has come to operate, that it is the only important thing. And if you don't support a politician of an oppressed identity, you're with the oppressor. It's so gaslighty, especially when those same politicians are clearly working in the interest of the oppressors. Yeah, to me, it's like one's identity, if someone's not a white heterosexual male, their identity to me is a doorway into a deeper way of seeing the world that can challenge hegemony. But it's not the room. It's a doorway into a room. And so we sometimes act like if we can just get Herman Cain to be president, then there's the Black experience will inform American politics. That's not how it works. It opens up the possibility, but we all know that Herman Cain, rest in peace, was not a great example of Black analysis of political powers in America.
Well, I mean, look, we have Clarence Thomas on the Supreme Court.
I still remember those. I'm still pissed at Biden for the Anita Hill hearings. Yeah. Catherine writes, I still have my McGovern button. Wow, that's dedication.
That's pretty cool.
That's cool.
I had a lot of McGovern buttons when I was a kid. I don't have them anymore.
But I remember my grandparents telling me stories of McGovern. I'm just kidding. My family was very conservative, so they did not like McGovern. Adam writes, it really does feel like the new year has finally come. I was saying that to Catherine yesterday. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Huzzah. Adam writes, a lot of responses to quote-unquote cancel culture or critiques of identity politics end up sounding like, shut the fuck up, what makes you think you get a say? I mean, we've talked a little bit about cancel culture. A lot of this, it just becomes super reactionary, and we get mired in not being able to talk about real issues. Dorinda writes, Trump flags are still all around my area. They are the new and improved Confederate flag representing the same ideology without shame.
Yeah, very good point.
It's a very good point.
The undercover Confederate flag.
Ellen asks, is there any way a person could be a truly good, righteous president? What would this look like? I mean, I remember, maybe it was John Howard Yoder, who I don't like to quote anymore for all kinds of reasons, but I think he pointed out that if a good person became president, they'd be impeached within the first 100 days.
Yeah.
And I think that's true.
One example of this in our modern lifetime, right, is Jimmy Carter, who, as a president, was sort of horrible and kind of a failure. And, since being president, has done amazing things to prove that as much as anyone is a good and righteous person, he is. But I think this, your question is a really great thought experiment that leads into systems analysis, right? It doesn't almost matter to some extent. Trump, of course, disproves this generalization. Who the individual is does not matter as much as what is going on with the system, right? And even with Trump, because without the GOP enabling him, without Mitch McConnell enabling him, without the all of the mechanism of the white supremacist apparatus of this country enabling him, Trump could never have done most of the things that he did.
Well, this is hard for me to say, but the United States government isn't entirely 100% evil. So like the reality was that Trump was restrained from doing the things he probably even wanted to do.
Right.
So the system, I think, skews towards bad, but like you're limited in what you can do. So like Trump took it one direction. I could imagine a good person coming and pushing in the other direction, but I think they would have been impeached too for different reasons. But they would have, I think a good president would have been impeached more quickly and it would have been effective. That's right. But we'll probably never get to know, because the chances of a good person getting to be president in the first place are already slim to none, given what to get into the office.
Right, and one lens to look at that through is economic, right? Because you could replace good and righteous with poor or middle class, right? A poor person can't be president. So what does that say about our system? And what does that say about goodness and righteousness, right? So if you have to be a millionaire or a billionaire to be president, are you good? All right.
There's a camel analogy in there somewhere. Cassio writes, why do we want unity with fascists? To heal America?
I think it might be great to revisit the unity concept, because that's another one of these ones that's now being tossed around so much that I'm completely convinced nobody has any idea what they're talking about.
Yeah. Tom writes, as much as I like the inauguration, 25,000 National Guard troops were suddenly kicked out to parking garages for it to happen. Made me sad. That was a big screw up. I was just reading about this morning.
They're out of the parking garages now, but yeah, that was very weird.
Yeah. Scott writes, check out Max Blumenthal's coverage at the Gray Zone. He covered the troop deployment in D.C. and made that point about peaceful transfer of power. Much love. Keep up the fight, everyone. It's like a heart, fist, smaller heart. Adam writes, 1/5 participants of the attempted putsch. How do you say this word? Is it putsch? I need to figure this out. Attempted putsch. We're military. No one knows. No one knows how to pronounce that word. We're military officers. Somehow those numbers haven't come out about police officers. I think it would be devastating to people who refuse to gauge what policing really is in this country. Yeah, so like the police are more involved in this than we want to think about. And like, to me, it reveals there's just an amazing kind of opening for analysis, starting with, Black Lives Matter, but George Floyd leading up to this failed putsch attempt or whatever, that shows the nature of policing in America. And at this point, if we can't, the opening has never been, there's a reason why now people are starting to talk about this, but it's still like, apparently it's not enough for people to realize what's happening. Mark writes, speaking of the Guard troops, apparently they were quite literally put out in the cold and forced to vacate the spaces in which they were camping by the very politicians taking selfies with them less than 24 hours prior.
That's the parking lot. Parking gate, we could call
that. Pete writes, Daniel's point about it not being peaceful if it required DC being militarized by 25,000 troops is spot on. Is this the new normal? I mean, that's one of my big fears, because now we've really normalized the fact that governors can call in troops for any protest.
Yeah.
Any protest. This is why, again, like I've gotten pushback about like, well, we need to have these laws that criminalize like coup attempts. I'm like, they're already criminalized. And these laws are going to make it harder, like it's just easier and more normal for troops to be unleashed upon Black Lives Matter protesters.
Yeah. Well, and we've already seen that here in Minneapolis over the last 6 months. I mean, when the uprising started, it took about 3 days to get the National Guard mobilized and here into the city. And now, over the last few months, I mean, there's a protest announced and, the Guard is rolling down the street 10 minutes later. I mean, this is now been completely normalized, that the National Guard is just available anytime for any kind of protest. And that is a big problem.
And it's diabolically clever in a way, because it's like people are against militarized police. What if we just brought in the military and just cut out the middleman? And then somehow like it's worked, because there's a ridiculous number of people who feel comforted by the National Guard being present.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it kind of sickens me because, you know,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, where Dan lives, there was all right there, you know, on the corner where I live, there were just people with machines. It's like, what is this, like Sarajevo in the 90s now? Like, that's what it feels like.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, one night I went out onto this porch and there's a soldier with a machine gun screaming at me, "Get back in your house." Just
Yeah, I
like,
remember that night when
interesting.
like when the sun was setting and then you know, they were going to like have a curfew and then just basically people marching down the streets. Like, I just expected there to be a tank almost marching on the street, yelling at people in their
We did
house.
have a tank rolling down our street.
Well, yeah, you know, I'm a mile away. It was way more mellow over here. We just had armored vehicles and machine guns. We didn't have tanks. Gus writes, Ellen, I'm reading an Indigenous people's history of the United States right now, and I'm not sure how you could be a righteous president without breaking up the Union and returning much of it to Indigenous. Quite frankly, there's so many layers to this. It's a great thought experiment to think about.
Yeah, it really is.
What would you do if you were president, Ellen? That'd be one way to answer that question. Because I think you're a good person. There's only so much you can do, but I'd be curious, like, what would be your top 10 things? That'd be fun to.
Well, Ellen's first 100 days. We should ever come up.
She'd only make it to 50 days before getting kicked out of office. But those would be 50 glorious days.
50 good days.
Adam writes, not that JFK was a great president, but he could have been. Another term for Carter also could have been good. They would have had to go against so much of how this country operates. It's funny how similarly a truly good president might look Trump's impeachment, breaking the system down, rallying revolutionaries, calling out media lies. Of course, a truly good president would have to address actual lies. LOL. This is why I get uncomfortable with people want to name like Trump's villainy as treason. Like that was the reason he was bad. I'm like, I don't mind treason at all if it's done right. His problem wasn't that he was treasonous.
Treason done right.
Yeah, I want treason done right. I don't want weird white supremacy treason. I want like liberation treason.
Liberation, freedom treason.
Yeah. John writes, you can hear the pronunciation here. Yeah, I maybe I'll go listen to that. I want to live in mystery. Adam writes, no militarized police, just bring in the military to police. Lol. Yeah, that's kind of what happened.
All right. Well, we're late as so often our
MO
habit. Yeah. But it's great to be back with everybody. Happy New Year. And we'll see you on Monday.
See you Monday, everybody.